Welcome to China Manufacturing Decoded from Sofeast, the podcast where we take you through some of the major topics facing importers and manufacturers in China today. Hello, it's Adrian from Sofeast here, and welcome along to episode 13 of the podcast. We're finally getting into the factory visit section of our mini-series on vetting suppliers. And in this episode, I caught up with Renaud to talk about some of the subjective factory evaluations that you should be making when you're using your own eyes to go and have a look around potential suppliers. Let's jump into it here.
Hi Renaud, how's it going?
Hey Adrian, yeah, great. And you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Just want to jump into the topic today. We've already been talking theoretically about a lot of actions that you can take when you're not even in China to start vetting Chinese suppliers. But in this episode, actually, we're going to be now talking about things that you do when you go on site for the first time. These are kind of like the subjective evaluations that you're doing of a potential supplier at their facility.
Right. Yeah, so in the past, 2 or 3 episodes, we went through some more objective sort of evaluations and checking their their ability to develop maybe a new product, their sort of legitimacy, avoiding scams and things like that. And there are still, a few steps you can take, especially if you can't come to China. There's certain things you can do from far away. There's certain things that are much better done when you are on site, and that's what we're going to cover today. It's not like a firm checklist with yes, no sort of check boxes. It's more like, this is interesting and this is interesting, and like building the picture of how it would work with that kind of supplier.
Right. And I'm coming from yourself with your experience. I think the ability to explain which observations are really important to focus on is going to be really helpful to anybody that's perhaps not visited Chinese supplier sites that much in the past.
It's also a little bit fun because, that's where you see a lot of really crazy stuff sometimes.
Right.
But it's also, it's also for experienced purchasers, people who've been traveling to China for 20 years. They sort of have these patterns of, okay, so they are that kind of supplier or that kind of supplier. They sort of have a few stereotypes, and they try to see where each potential supplier would fit, and that's it's usually based on a lot of subjective elements, right? We broke it down into a few sort of categories, and the first one really depends actually on your company and your needs and how much you would purchase and so on. It's more like the fit between them and you. How good of a fit is there? Because whether you are a chain of 20 stores in Belgium, or if you are a wholesaler in the US, or there's a lot of companies buying from China, and at very different maybe price points, quantities, quality standard, and so on. And really, it's important to know what kind of suppliers you should try to work with and which ones you should try to avoid. So the first thing is the size, and that's really relatively straightforward. If you place large orders, and especially if you want these large orders to be made relatively fast, you can work with a really small company, small manufacturer, right? And conversely, if you buy, 10,000 pieces a year of a certain product, and you go to a factory that makes 10 billion pieces a year, do you think they're really going to pay much attention to you? Do you think they will get to know you? Do you think they will pay attention to your email when you're really stressed out about something and you need their attention quick? It's not going to happen, right? So you need to strike the right balance, and different companies have different attitudes, different policies about that. For example, some companies say, well, don't buy more than whatever 5 containers from a supplier in a given season, or just to limit the risk. But also, when it comes to selecting the suppliers, don't work with a company whatever under 200 operators, or we have to represent at least 10% of their production capacity. So the size obviously is important. Too small, there might be a big constraint on the product of that you need to sell your product to your customers, or you need to use to do something else with them. Too large, and you basically don't count, right? They could just forget your orders, or who knows. Another one is the seasonality. It's pretty obvious when you think about it, but if you are, in Australia and it's very seasonal, maybe it's, I don't know, do it yourself, like, I don't know, barbecues. Let's say barbecue grills, and they work mostly with American customers. That's fine, because they're going to be very busy for having a lot of barbecue grills in the US in May, let's say. And then for you, they're going to you're gonna need them actually in your stores in, I don't know, in October, right? So it's quite that's quite good. But if you're going to have the same seasonality as their other customers, it's not great. The focus. So what I call the focus is, for example, let's say you buy garments, apparel, and you say, well, you go to a factory and they say, hey, we work for Victoria's Secret, let's say it's lingerie. And they say, oh, okay. Well, you need to understand what exactly is Victoria's Secret. Victoria's Secret is nice fabrics, relatively nice accessories and lace and things like that, but cheap on the workmanship side. The workmanship, the finishing is not great. Now, if you want to sell into high-end boutiques and you really need very, very good fit, very good finishing, and so on, well, that's not going to be good. I mean, if their number one customer is that kind of customer, you should not work with that factory. You need to look for a factory that is focused on customers that have the same sort of needs as you in terms of attention to quality and so on. And if they say, well, we work for Walmart, it's all about very high quantity and cost control, but like just getting away with the lowest quality they can, basically. That might not be what you want. Let me see a few others. If you identify one process step that's extremely important, and that is often the cause of quality issues, for example, then you might want to try to work with a manufacturer that does it in-house versus subcontract it, right? So you need to understand what they do in-house, pretty important. The contact person, very important. Who are you going to work with? If they give you a sort of an inexperienced salesperson who just graduated and can speak some English but understands nothing about the business, and it means they don't consider you a very high potential customer. If at the same time they have 5 other good salespeople, right? And that might be a real issue. And when you request to have access to someone else more experienced for certain topics, if they say no, we can't really do that, but this lady is just perfect for you, you know what they think of you, right? On the other hand, if you see that your salesperson is great, is working hard, is is really a problem solver, really tries to understand what's important to you, goes to have a look in production, catches some issues and so on. I mean, that's a keeper. That's great. That's a very positive sign. And you might not see that at the very beginning, but you probably, you can feel if it's someone who's been around the block, who tries to find solutions, try to make things work out, easy to communicate, understand what you say pretty fast. All of these things are obviously positive. Now, conversely, I should also add that a lot of buyers make their decisions primarily based on that, and that is that is at the origin of a lot of disasters, basically, that we've seen, because it's not enough. It's not enough. You can have a great salesperson in a really crappy factory or trading company, and she cannot ensure that everything is going to go as expected.
Right.
So
it gives you a false sense of security, because
yeah,
perhaps you've dealt
right.
with other Chinese representatives who didn't speak great English, and it was more difficult, and so you think, hey,
Exactly.
this person's really, really efficient now. This is great.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm in good hands. Everything's fine. They understand everything I say, and so on, and vice versa. Great. Another one is, let's say you go to their showroom and you look around, the stuff they've made, and they say, yeah, anything you want, we can make for you. And it's like everything is their own designs. Is it really the case? Probably not. These designs are probably, they probably belong to some other customers of theirs. And if they don't tell you, that tells you something about intellectual property rights, what they think about it and how much respect they have for it. So
right.
if you want to
so
develop,
your design's going to be the next one in the showroom that they're showing to other people.
Yeah, if you're going to design new products, that's what they're going to do to your design. Yes. So, but really here, of all of those that I listed, perhaps the most important one is the size. If they're too large, they're not going to be very flexible. They're going to say, well, that's the way we do. Sorry. They're going to have more resources. However, their resources will obviously be primarily used by their top 3, top 5 customers. There's no way around that. Now, if you can work with them on a new kind of product, new, let's say, category that they really want to become strong in, and like you're one of their first customers in that new category of products, and maybe their high season is different from yours, you can use them in their low season, or maybe they just lost a couple of big accounts in their China factory because they went to their Vietnam factory, let's say. Well, you can have actually a lot of great support, right? The problem is sometimes it's the opposite that happens with very big companies. Their number one customer says, hey, this is really urgent. Everything else is going to be stopped, sort of. And nearly all of the production floor will be just for that one big customer that just banged on the table because everything is already 3 weeks late. And otherwise they will have to send the equivalent of 20 containers by plane, which is crazy expensive. So, and your order will be totally bumped. You might lose 1 month there. So that's sort of what you can expect with them. You will not have the best salesperson. Again, probably more of a rookie. And that's life with really big companies. If you work with a really small supplier, sort of the opposite. You can have access to the boss if maybe he doesn't speak English, but you can get them with a translator or whatever. The problem is they might have zero structure. If the boss or his wife is sick, then who knows what's going to happen, right? And in terms of experience, competencies, in terms of reach on the markets, maybe to find the right components and everything, might be a disaster. So be aware of all this. That's what I would say. Okay.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. I mean, all of these points you've made, really, it's a continuation of the initial vetting that we've already discussed in prior episodes to this, and
Right.
it's a really important way to just confirm the research that you've done and make sure that nothing wrong has slipped through the cracks. So, is
Hmm.
the factory that you're going to deal with, are they actually who they say they are?
Hmm.
Do they have the capabilities that you're expecting? And of course, the best way to check this is to see it with your own eyes, I guess.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm,
Um, Another angle is, and I've been to too many of these factories, and I observe them, and you know, whether it's checking them up, telling them where they need to improve, or trying to help them improve, and so on. You really see how the managers work, and
mm,
some of them are just, I mean, the management is horrible, horrible. So a few examples are the boss and the managers who just talk, in their offices, in their conference room. You can never get them on the shop floor. Maybe it's too hot, maybe it's dirty, maybe it's noisy. It's just better to be in their office, looking at their phone to see what their friends or their wife is telling them, and sipping tea and so on. This is just a horrible sign. Um, it means they don't even know what's going on, right? They don't even try to see what happens and how to make things better. Just really ignorant. A lot, and this is really at all the levels. I mean, the managers, the supervisors. I mean, the production supervisors and even the team leaders. Sometimes I see them; they have their own little office somewhere, out of the shop floor, which is crazy. They should be right there because their work is right there. They should see the problems and help solve the problems. I mean, and
mm,
and then they do email, and then they send so many emails to each other, and just killing their productivity and basically making themselves useless. Really, really bad. Um, uh, you walk around, and then they don't even try to make any kind of metrics, visual, uh, with maybe on posters or screens or whatever on the walls, so people know about the output, about maybe the first pass yield or some other quality performance metric, and the top 1, 2, 3 quality issues, and what they really need to work on today or this week, or if you walk around and you don't see any of that, well, guess what? It's Yeah, the managers have all of that in their heads, and they really don't try to develop their people. They don't try to communicate about what's doing right, what's going wrong.
mm,
Um, Anyway, this is not a very good sign. And then you can ask some operators, if you speak some Chinese, are you paid by the piece or by the hour? And if they say by the piece, well, that's you're working with a factory where you might have some issues, because this kind of pay scheme has a lot of perverse effects. Maybe that's a topic for another podcast, but it's really at the root of a
mm,
lot of issues that we see. On the other hand, if you take that, turn it on its head, if you see that the boss who founded the company is actually quite a technical person, is really involved in any technical discussions, that's great. It's not just a salesperson who stole 2 or 3 customers from his ex company and set up his own shop. No, that is usually a very positive sign. If they can talk intelligently about what they do for their other customers, that's a little bit out of the ordinary. If they see some trends, if they say, no, we really need to be big on that kind of product because that's where the market is going. Okay, these guys are well managed. They should survive, in the next 5, 10 years. That's great, right?
mm,
Um, if A lot of suppliers, when you talk to them and you say, oh, this is going to be millions of pieces, they're like super excited. Yeah, finally I got it. I'm going to get from, I don't know, 300 people to 800 people and I'm, all of my friends are going to be, wow, you're the man. And that's, and my wife is going to be so happy, and we're going to buy a lot of real estate and right into the sunset. That's sort of the way they think, a lot of them, especially the older generation. But the problem is it's extremely risky, actually. If you make high volumes with very slim margins, when you have one issue, it can cost you so much money, can wipe out all of your profit for 2 or 3 years, or can just kill the company. So the smart ones also always look for profit. They look at their margins, and they talk about their costs. They try to really understand their costs. They can explain their costs. This is a huge plus, right? Because I can tell you, you go to 100 Chinese factories, and it's the same in Vietnam, actually. Any factory under 1,000 people, and you try to see if they have any kind of analytical accounting. Now, of course, they will not show it to you. It's considered extremely proprietary and secret. But you can see by talking to them that they have zero clue about the cost drivers, and if they do this, is it, do they make more money on this one, on that, or that one, that customer, or that product line, or that process. They have zero clue, right? So that means they might maybe underquote and then later get back to you and say, oh, well, actually it's more expensive than we thought. Hey, the price is 30% higher, right? If they don't know, that's the kind of things that might happen. So you need to be ready for that. You need to have a feel for their understanding of their costs, and their let's say contribution to margin, for at least at the process level, and maybe for their the main kinds of products that they make. If they have zero clue, wow. And if they just talk about volume, oh yeah, well, this one will make so many, it's great. They have no clue, and this might actually catch up with you and really hurt you later on. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Or?
Yeah, sure. Fundamentally, you're talking about assessing how well managed the factory is, and it makes sense that if they struggle with some of the, maybe can we call them basics, that's not going to lead to a very sustainable relationship later on.
Yeah, and they might actually go out of business. They're more likely to go out of business in this case. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, and then another thing, when you walk around the factory, there's a blog post where I wrote a number of questions like that, and it's kind of fun to go through them. Some very simple stuff. Is it clean? Do people just like throw stuff on the floor and don't even care about it, and then somebody else has to come and wipe it out? I mean, this is really, really the sign of management that abdicated their power, and like, whatever happens, we don't care, or actually I should say no management. Okay, no management, no discipline, no nothing. We don't even try to do a good job. We don't care. It's just a pigsty. And in relatively small factories, this is just extremely common. Yeah, do they put the products in direct contact with the ground? Do they show respect for the product? If it's electronic parts, are they in contact with non-ESD sensitive containers and surfaces? I mean, in anything that might hurt the product, sort of, or lead to some quality issues, or just make it dirty, is obviously a very bad sign. But if they don't do that, it means they have zero culture about quality. So you can talk and talk and talk about your quality standard, but with this kind of factory, it's you can talk yourself to death, right?
It just goes over their head.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Very often they have, in their office, maybe they will have a nice toilet, for the boss and visitors, maybe customers. But go have a look into the operators' toilets. if it's all really dirty and stinky and zero maintenance, and you can say, hey, what's going on here? I mean, you don't even try to keep it clean and replace this when it's broken, or why don't you even give them soap? Right? It's crazy. It's just crazy stuff that is considered normal in China. Okay, but it means the people are not concerned. They don't even try. Right? You look at the equipment. Now, if they just do very simple assembly, this is not going to be very revealing. Well, even though, I mean, the tables that they work on and these kind of things, maybe the packing equipment, or there might be something you can look at. Is it relatively new? Is it kept clean? Is it just old and half destroyed? Look at these kinds of things. It gives you an idea. And if they do some fabrication, look at the equipment, and does it seem like they have invested in something recently, or have they been running this way for 15 years? I remember a funny example where they had a really nice brochure with a photo dating back 10 years or more of very nice equipment, all new. And then our auditor goes there, takes photos, and and the client was like, whoa, taken aback. And he compared with the brochure, and then he understand, okay, that photo was taken maybe 20 years ago. I don't know, it's the same equipment in the same place, but it's so old and run down, right?
So it looks like those underwater pictures of the Titanic.
Yeah, and what that means also is zero maintenance. I mean, the job of maintenance is to keep the equipment in the same condition as new, basically, right? Or as close as possible. But in most of these workshops, they just use it. They just run the equipment until it breaks down. There's no preventive measures. And then you end up with really old and crappy equipment that breaks down from time to time. And usually what that means also is bad impact on quality, because if it doesn't operate as it's supposed to operate, not good. Another thing, it's not just the production equipment, it's also the testing equipment. Now, if they do pay attention to quality, are they going to have crappy testing equipment that's not even within calibration, that's not maintained? I don't think so. This is really a sign that they care or they don't care about quality, right? Same thing as respect the product or don't respect the product. This is really a telling sign. And then you compare all of that to the car that the owner is driving, which is sometimes funny. Some of them, and again, it's more like the old generation in China now of bosses, but it's still very prevalent. They see their business as a source of cash, and whenever there's no more cash, there's no more business. They can close it. They don't care. So they try to suck all the cash out of it as possible, and then try to be smart and make investments here and there. Typically in real estate, because Chinese people don't have that many avenues for investing. This is really a classic. Let me see. Lines on the ground. Trying to keep the floor clean and trying to keep things organized. This is the alleyways, and this is a yellow line to say, okay, this is where people are going to walk, so don't put stuff in the middle. It's good for safety also. This is red lines, maybe for a quarantine area, not for COVID, but for suspicious or segregated material that's that is or might be defective. safety, personal protective equipment. Again, not for COVID, but for if they do, I don't know, they do grinding, polishing, they really need to have glasses. They do some paint. They really need to have something, a mask, right? If possible, a carbon active mask. This is just a few examples. They cut something with their hands, sort of with a sort of a shoe. They must have proper gloves, maybe in metal, right? Just a few examples, but this is crazy. I mean, I remember some foundries, and they were doing, for example, they were doing casting or forging, and you have this molten metal. It can be more than 1,000 degrees. They open the oven, they take it with kind of a bucket. The guys are in flip-flops and t-shirts, and they go and pour it into some kind of mold. You're like, whoa. When you see that, safety usually goes hand in hand with quality and with developing the people for improvement and all these kind of things, right?
It's an interesting point. Is it to this day you can still see Chinese guys on the pavement, like welding different metal gates and doors and stuff, and they're just wearing shorts and flip flops, and okay, they use a visor when they hit the trigger to weld, but they've got no gloves or anything, and
right, or they don't even. Sometimes they weld, and then they sort of maybe they cut a piece of cardboard, put it in front of their eyes.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy, and it's flammable, by the way. So it adds to safety issues. Anyway, it's just amazing. Blows my mind.
I suppose it would shock a lot of Western observers to see this, and I suppose it is important to assess whether your supplier is actually going down that route.
Right. Yeah.
Can it affect corporate social responsibility if that's the case?
Totally.
As well. That's something to think about, isn't it?
Actually, that's what I think is the most important thing when you look at social compliance in countries. Vietnam and China are or used to be whatever communist, so you don't really have a big problem of child labor. Forced labor. There's a lot of concerns about that. But personal safety is actually the one thing that's most shocking to me, and I think that should be given much more emphasis. But I don't know. A lot of buyers are, they don't want to face that. They just don't care, or they're cowards, or it's something that's really shocking to me. Anyway. Back to management, some factories are really run by terror. So people are nervous, and you look at them and they're like, I made a mistake again, and that's not good. That's not good. The operators, mostly young, mostly old operators. Sometimes you really see grannies, and it's not forbidden. Try to make an extra buck for their family, and there's nothing bad about that. They're necessarily going to be a bit slower and less adaptable. That just tells you a little bit about the company. Are they more or less like of a dynamic company, basically, right? Have they broken down the work in very short cycles? And then you see the operators, they work on something. This is typically for assembly, for 5 seconds. They put it down, and then it takes the next one, and then they do something for 5 seconds, and they put it down. And this is typically also very lazy management. There's no process engineering usually behind it, because it's so inefficient to have them waste so much of their time just picking the product and then putting it down and readjusting every time for the product and everything. It's very low efficiency, but this really means no process engineering, no consideration of efficiency, right? Have they tried to connect the different processes as well as they could, or are they really like cutting it into small islands that are not connected, and with a buffer of inventory always somewhere in the middle. Sometimes it might make sense, but in most cases, that's again an insult to productivity. Yeah, of course, you need to look again at what they're doing in-house. If you go to a place and they just pack products that come from other workshops, well, yeah, I mean, this is very low value added. You know, what would you work with these guys? They're basically doing trading and just repacking the products, right? So you need to treat them as a trading company, basically. And then, of course, if you visit and you can see, look at the shipping marks and the labels and everything on the products, it gives you an idea about the kind of customers that they serve. And so if they don't want to give you references and of customers, that gives you an idea about the real stuff, you know. And this might be indirect customers through a trading company, through a wholesaler or whatever, but it's the end, you know, that's where it's going to be sold, let's say, right? If you see, I don't know, for Garmin, you see Forever 21. Maybe they don't work directly with Forever 21 because they buy through so many intermediaries. But okay, that tells you, you know, fast fashion, you know, roughly that level of price and quality. I mean, if you need to know your industry, basically, right? If you go to see, I don't know, a molding shop, and then they make a lot of parts by the hundreds of millions, and it's for Huawei, well, that tells you something. Okay, well, this is really a mass production shop with high quality requirements and focused on very high volumes. Okay, that's clear. You know, that really tells you something. And also very small pieces, obviously. So it's really going there with your eyes open and looking around and understanding who you're dealing with.
That's a lot to think about. I don't think anybody listening would have come into starting this podcast knowing that they should actually be checking the staff toilets at the factory that they're looking at, and that could actually give them some, you know, valuable insight. But nonetheless, it does indeed. So, you know, you've gone through the three sort of strands of what you can be looking for with your own eyes, which is the fit to your business, and then how well managed the supplier appears to be, and then the state of the factory, you know, the setup and how well that they actually conduct themselves. And I suppose that speaks to professionalism and a lot of other things, as we discussed. So with all of these things in mind, somebody that can then really get a lot more value out of their next visit to a Chinese supplier, can't they? Or someone in Vietnam, I suppose.
When they can visit, right? That's obviously a problem. However, you can send someone, ask them, you know, to take certain photos, take some videos of certain things, or maybe get some extra information. You know, this already gives you some questions and some information to collect. It doesn't have to be yourself on the ground, right? I mean, typically quality auditors will not tend to look at these kinds of things because they like to say, okay, here's my checklist, and I try to do it in the most objective way possible. And then if I audit 10 factories that are supposed to, you know, that are lined up to make the same product and so on with the same checklist, then you can compare them. And if another auditor goes and audits them, they should not be very far away in terms of score, right? So it's usually all about objectivity. However, usually, I mean, you know, some clients ask us some questions like this sometimes, and it's fine. Yeah, take some photos of this, take a video of this. You know, that's fine. It's just a few like extra checkpoints. You know, there's usually no resistance to that.
So, with all of your points in mind, I think that whoever's listening is ready to really get involved and get some good insights next time they go and visit a factory. Or if somebody's going in there anyway, like an auditor, perhaps they can ask them to just check into a few things and get a few more pictures than they normally would have.
Yep, that would make sense.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that wraps up this episode. Thanks for your input there, Renaud.
All right. Hey, that's a good one. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to like and share, and you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other places that you get your podcasts from. See you next time.